every day, the divide between who Kamala Harris is and what she actually stands for and who Donald Trump is and what he actually stands for becomes wider and wider, man. And people see it, man. They've got to see it. You know, we're getting to the point where you have to be either blind or so intellectually poisoned by propaganda and TDS to not see it, right? Donald Trump has given over 30 interviews. Kamala Harris, she's been interviewed for 16 minutes total, and she had to bring her emotional support simp to even get through that. And Donald Trump, he just held a town hall a couple days ago in place of one of the debates that Kamala Harris declined. And while Kamala Harris is in hiding for her debate prep, Donald Trump gave one of the best economic speeches I've heard in a very, very long time yesterday. And the media is absolutely panicking.
An economic disaster on our hands. We have an economy in crisis, a failing nation, a nation in serious decline under the radical policies of my former opponent, Joe Biden, and my new opponent, Kamala Harris. 1.3 million workers have become unemployed in the past 12 months. I don't know if anybody knows that. The typical American family has lost over $28,000 due to rampant and record-setting inflation. Credit card debt has reached the highest in history, with more than 1 in 3 Americans reporting they have maxed out their credit cards. They've maxed out. Families now need to earn an estimated $110,000 a year to afford a typical home, meaning 65% of households are locked out of buying just an ordinary house. Gasoline prices, grocery prices, electricity prices, mortgage rates, and virtually everything else are up 30 to 100% since I left office. 8.4 million Americans are now working second jobs, the highest in more than 30 years. The real wages of African American workers are down by over 6%, a short period of time. The real incomes from Hispanic men are down 6.6%, or $3,600 per year. And on top of that, African Americans and Hispanic American jobs are under massive threat from the invasion taking place at our border.
Just think about some of the stats you just heard. We got 1.3 million Americans have lost their job in the past 12 months. And if you add to that the 800,000 fake jobs that the government's been claiming when they were cooking the books during the monthly jobs reports, that's over 2 million jobs just vanished, gone from the most prolific jobs creators in all of human history. You got inflation. That's cost the average family $28,000. And this is the one that should scare the hell out of literally everyone. I mean, this is massive. 1 in 3 people have their credit cards maxed out. That's incredible. I mean, that is just massive. And at the same time that they have their credit cards maxed out, 65% of families have literally no hope of buying a home right now. You know, California Democrats like Kamala Harris, they want to subsidize illegal aliens buying homes with $150,000 given to them. But 65% of American families cannot buy a home and can't pay their credit cards, right? People are struggling. I mean, real people all over the place are really struggling. And this speech by Trump is driving the left absolutely crazy. And not because it's not true. It's not because they can't fact check it or all that stuff, but it's driving them crazy because they think that you've never heard this stuff before. And they're afraid that you're going to think things like this are a good idea.
Fourth, at the suggestion of Elon Musk, who has given me his complete and total endorsement. That's nice, because he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. It's very, very much appreciated. I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms. We need to do it. Can't go on the way we are now. And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force. Be interesting. If he has the time, it'll be a good one to do it, but he's agreed to do it. In 2022, fraud and improper payments alone cost taxpayers an estimated hundreds of billions of dollars. As the first order of business, this commission will develop an action plan to totally eliminate fraud and improper payments within 6 months. This will save trillions of dollars, trillions. It's massive. For the same service that you have right now, trillions of dollars is wasted and gone and nobody knows where it went. Further taming inflation and bringing prices way down.
I promise you, this frightens them way more than you ever finding out Kamala's a scam, right? This frightens them more than you finding out price controls destroy choice, or, taxing unrealized gains will actually affect you and me way before it affects someone with $100 million. They're not afraid of Trump's economic policies, right? They're not even afraid of him. Well, they're really not afraid of him destroying democracy. They're worried that he's going to get elected and he'll actually do this. They're afraid that Elon Musk and Donald Trump would actually fix things and would upset the status quo.
There's a thing that happens over time with any given civilization, which is that the laws and regulations accumulate, and if there's not some forcing function like a war to clean up the accumulation of laws and regulations, eventually everything becomes legal, and that's like the hardening of the arteries. Or a way to think of it is like being tied down by a million little strings, like Gulliver. You can't move. And it's not like any one of those strings is the issue. You've got a million of them. So there has to be a sort of a garbage collection for laws and regulations, so that you don't keep accumulating laws and regulations to the point where you can't do anything. This is why we can't build high-speed rail in America. It's illegal. That's the issue. It's illegal 6 ways to Sunday to build high-speed rail in America.
I wish you could just for a week go into Washington and be the head of the committee for making, for the garbage collection, making government smaller, removing stuff.
I have discussed with Trump the idea of a government efficiency commission.
Nice. Yeah.
And I would be willing to be part of that commission.
I wonder how hard that is.
The antibody reaction would be very strong.
Yes. Yeah.
So you really have to. You're attacking the Matrix at that point. The Matrix will fight back.
Yeah, I mean, these guys aren't kidding. When they talk about the antibody reaction being strong and the Matrix fighting back, I mean, there's no question. I mean, the Matrix will always fight back. The Matrix is fighting back right now. But luckily for us, I mean, its best and last hope somehow became Kamala Harris. And I'm still not entirely sure how that happened, but this is what's happened. So this really is our best chance to actually make this a reality, because our government is bloated, man. It does need a purge. We have over 115 federal agencies, man, that make a completely uncountable number of new regulation and basically new law every year. I mean, the FDA alone, almost 90% of its new regulations are made by nameless, faceless bureaucrats that will never be fired and you'll never hear of. The actual political appointees, they make almost no decisions at some of these agencies. And that's the FDA. I mean, that's one of the agencies that is actually important. But somehow to the left, that's good. That's acceptable. That's a healthy government. And guys like Donald Trump and Elon Musk are bad.
Yes,
actually.
That too, yes, no, yep. And Tesla is hugely important to have a U.S. national champion in the green energy revolution. The renewable battery technology is, a huge part of the U.S. leadership in the climate change transition. One of the reasons that they viewed him as a huge hero up until he became a free speech advocate. And so, I mean, I don't think I can say it any better than one of the writers from the National Endowment for Democracy, the very CIA cutout that we've talked about, dozens of times now in this dialogue, which is that one of the writers from the National Endowment for Democracy wrote just a few months ago that Elon Musk is a greater national security threat to the United States than Russia. This is a few months ago, this is post outbreak of the war. This is in 2024, and that Elon is a greater threat to the United States and U.S. national security than Russia because his proximal impact on U.S. politics and allowing, opposition political movements to rise will cause changes in U.S. government that are more likely to make us lose the war on Russia than Russia itself. It's the same thing NATO said in 2017. He said, though, we're in a pickle because the U.S. government is so dependent on Elon's properties. And so, basically called for a kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts type strategy. And this is what we're seeing.
And wrote this in public?
Yes, you can look it up. This is this is national. I believe the author of it was a man named Dean Jackson, is a current or former National Endowment for Democracy fellow. He's a part of this whole censorship industry apparatus that I've talked about that that is done through the Whole Society Network. And I can actually post the article on my X account if folks are interested right after this. But yes, arguing that, again, but the National Endowment for Democracy gets its funding by the U.S. government. It is not only, it is accountable to Congress.
But imagine a more anti-American belief than American citizens shouldn't be allowed to talk.
But that's exactly it to the left, man. That's exactly it. To the left, allowing American citizens to think and to speak freely about the things that they actually think, those are threats to democracy. But you have to understand it the way a Democrat does. You have to understand what the left actually means by democracy. When a leftist says the word democracy, they really mean Democrat power. When Democrats are in power, democracy is safe. That's what they believe. And when conservatives are silenced and common sense no longer exists, democracy is even more safe. When the people have nothing and the government controls their lives and provides for all their needs, then democracy is safe. Which brings us right back to Donald Trump yesterday in the New York Economic Club.
Payne is right here, host of Making Money on Fox Business. That would make folks a lot of money, lower gas prices. So he's laying out his plans. Is he articulating plans that the American people, that he might sway voters? Let's put it that way.
I think so. I like what he's saying. I like the way he's saying it. And because, listen, particularly with the tariff part, right? A lot of automatic pushback on that. And a lot from Republicans, particularly old school conservative Republican, economists and things like that. And he's walking us, first of all, I think, history. How we became the greatest country in the world. We didn't have taxes until 1913, right? I've got the list here from our revenue in 1915 for the country. 48% came from excise tax, 30% from duties, right? So tariffs is how we made our money. Individual taxes are only 5.9%, corporate 5.6%. Imagine if we could start getting those down again. And there's some other lessons. He brought up McKinley, who was known as the Napoleon of protection. And historians look back at what happened with him. It's ironic because it cost the Republicans the election. But going back and looking at the tariffs that he imposed at his time, it sped up the production of, for instance, tin plate so quickly in our country that it was actually more beneficial than the short increases in prices for consumers. And then again, many people don't know about the Fort North McKinley Macomber tariffs in 1922. But in 1920, we had the worst depression in this country outside of the Great Depression. And as we came out of it, one of the tools that we actually used were tariffs. And remember, there was this thing called the Roaring '20s right after that.
We do. And as you were speaking, just highlighting something that is coming from the president's speech just now, this is an important one because how the candidates lay out their plan to perhaps increase housing or lower housing costs for Americans, voters who believe the American dream is sort of dwindling away when you can't afford to buy a home anymore. The former president just said there to the Economic Club that he would open portions of federal land for large-scale housing construction in zones that will be ultra low tax and low regulation. This is interesting. Is this a plan that you would support?
It is something interesting. Listen, our government owns over 50% of the land in this country, right? So it is not only is interesting, but it's something people have been pushing for a very, very long time. The idea ultimately is like whether it's this or the so-called 50,000 for small businesses that no one ever is going to really qualify for, is that what's implementable, right? What can we really do to implement and jumpstart things? And if the affordability is the question right now, and the lack of homes, the lack of supply, and the affordability. And so if there's places where we can build them cheaper, and people can go and buy them on their own. It might be.
And boost skilled labor, right? Bring some of those wages down if you increase the workforce.
All of that's important.
Yeah. And part of that obviously is inflation, because the cost to build those homes is just skyrocketed. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't make sense to build new homes.
By the way, we should also point out a big chunk of that cost are these regulations.
Absolutely.
Regulations. Trump spent a lot of time talking today about how he took down regulations. I don't think the American public understands. If you look at the cost of anything, look at a gallon of gasoline. Yep. How much is crude oil? How much is refinery? How much is regulations and other stuff in there, right? Every time the government passes a new law, you have to pay for it in one form or another.
Yeah.
So just think about that, man. You've got one side, you've got the Kamala Harris side that wants to regulate and tax you damn near out of existence, right? While at the same time proclaiming that they're going to build 3 million homes. They have no mention of how, no mention of who's going to pay for it or who's going to benefit. And the other side, who also thinks housing needs to be addressed because it does, but they say that the way to do it is to open up the land, reduce the regulation, reduce the tax liability, and just let the free markets get it done for people. Anyone who even barely understands the world, understands which of these options not only makes sense, but which of these options actually has a chance in hell at success, which brings us right back to them and Donald Trump. It's why their only move is to destroy Donald Trump. They want to hide the fact that Kamala Harris has no message and has no plan, while destroying literally every bit of Donald Trump's message and Donald Trump's plan that they can. That is what they're doing, man. And we can't let them get away with it. But that's all I got, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.